Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thank you to all of our witnesses who are with us today, either virtually or in the room. Let me be clear, it's the prevalence of guns in the wrong hands, in the hands of criminals, in the hands of the mentally ill, and in the hands of terrorists. Guns in those hands is an American tragedy. And as someone who basically dedicated my life, certainly a large percentage of it as a law enforcement officer, to protecting and serving and saving lives, when we have the power to do that, this is not about taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. My father was a hunter. I grew up with it seems like a house full of guns. I carried one for a lot of years. But it's about keeping guns out of the wrong hands, not out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. Look, Pulse nightclub is in my district. Don't ask me not to care about the victims of that. Parkland is in my state. Don't ask me not to care about the victims in Parkland. This week, I'm joined by some of you in the room, including our distinguished chair, to introduce new legislation, the Protecting Our Communities Act, to close multiple loopholes in federal law that allows guns, those loopholes that allow guns to fall into the wrong hands. Ghost guns? Are we really here today? Are there really some people in this room who are defending ghost guns, guns that are not traceable? What about armor-piercing, concealable assault weapons? These weapons can fire through ballistic vests worn by law enforcement officers and can be easily concealed. Are you asking me, as a former law enforcement officer, not to care about that? Milwaukee police officer Matthew Rittner was killed by one in 2019. Should we just forget that? The same year, a shooter in Dayton, Ohio, thank you, Mr. Skaggs, for mentioning that, killed 9 people and injured 27 others. This year in Boulder, Colorado, a man with an AR-15 style pistol killed 10, including a responding officer. These weapons should be regulated under the National Firearms Act, but were specifically designed by gun companies to avoid those rules. We need to close loopholes in our background checks system, taking action to keep guns out of the wrong hands. I say that yet again. It's not controversial. The vast majority, because we do represent people throughout this nation, the vast majority of Americans agree that we should be taking straightforward steps to keep guns out of the wrong hands. Legislation can help us fulfill that mission. I still want, as a member of Congress, to protect and serve and save lives. And I'm asking my colleagues to join us in that effort. Mr. Skaggs, I really do have a question. You discussed in your testimony the proliferation and lethality of armor-piercing handguns, weapons that would be regulated under the National Firearms Act, both through the Law Enforcement Protection Act and the Protect Our Communities Act. Can you speak more in detail about why these particular weapons and the ammunition they fire are so dangerous to law enforcement and, quite frankly, to our children, our neighbors, our co-workers, our friends, and so many others?